Thanks for tuning in to the Proline Handicapping Show on the web. Coming up, Western Kentucky faces Tennessee and Georgia hosts Gonzaga in college hoops, plus the Las Vegas Bowl featuring BYU and Oregon, as well as Sunday's AFC matchup between the Bills and Dolphins. But first, let's hear from our Proline panelists.
Welcome back to Proline. This is our third week on the web, and our viewership last week went way up, and we got some cards and letters, emails, complimenting us on the show. We're glad everybody's enjoying it, and we're going to continue, like I said before, right through the basketball season, so stay tuned. This week we're going to cover a bowl game, and we're going to cover two basketball games and a pro football game as well, and we always start out with a nice discussion, and I'd like to just mention how about that Colt defense, you know? I mean, when in the first half they were giving up 14 yards per carry. At one point. I mean, it was just absolutely incredible. 251 yards rushing. This is not a Super Bowl team.
No. And this takes us all the way back to August when we did our preview show and talked about Tony Dungy's first remark of the preseason saying we needed to get quicker on defense, and we all went, huh? Mm-hmm. Because they needed to get bigger and stronger on defense, and they obviously didn't do it. I was doing your show, subbing for you last week in Indianapolis, and talking to the guy, I was talking about the game and how badly the defense has been against the run, and if they couldn't stop Tennessee, playing them the second time in just a few weeks after almost getting beat by them, then how are they going to stop Jacksonville? At the same time, it looks so easy. I was telling them you got to be careful, though, because it looks like a very easy spot. And I think you're going to see square money and wise guy money coming in on Jacksonville because it looks so easy, though, that I thought that maybe it wouldn't be a big play. But, boy, you're right. They ran through them, 14 yards per play. As Jim predicted, Peyton Manning wouldn't be throwing too many touchdowns from the sideline. I don't think he threw even one being on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it's been, how many weeks has it been now they haven't scored over 17 points? It's been quite
a while because teams are keeping them on the bench.
They're in a slump, and if they lost 3 of their last 4, and then in the week before that they were lucky to win because Buffalo missed a field goal. Mm-hmm. So they're really struggling. And the question I've got right now is, it's starting to, I hate to tag a guy, but Tony Dungy seems to be able to get a team to a certain level, and that's it. And now they're starting to go the other way, and you wonder. I think it's putting maybe a little bit early to suggest this, but his seat could be getting a little bit warm there because they didn't produce what they were supposed to produce, and they don't look like they're going to this year.
You can only be a contender for so long.
Yep.
And eventually you have to produce. I mean, this team has been a contender. They've led the league in victories up to a certain point each year, the last few years, and then at the end, they sort of collapse. Maybe that's too much early, and they just peter out. But this defense wasn't structured right from the beginning.
It's funny. I wish I could remember the name of the player. One of the Colt players last week said, we're giving up 160 yards per game rushing. That's not going to happen this week, and he was quite prophetic, wasn't he? They certainly did. Just twice that much. Enough about Indiana. How about the team that beat him, this Jacksonville team? I know we always, towards the end of the season, a couple games left, we start saying, what's the team that nobody might want to play right now? Boy, this Jacksonville team.
But they got a long ways to go. They can get in the playoffs.
Yeah, look at how they play at home versus how they play on the road. Mm-hmm. They have been very, very sad on the road. At home, they were dynamite.
I think so. This new quarterback, Gerard.
Yeah,
I tell you what, I think that was the best thing that could have happened to him, having him come in and run the offense. It gives them a second option. He'll run the ball. He's pretty quick, and I think that'll help them in road games. But
they do have a physical defense.
They do.
They do hurt people.
And they're not 100% healthy. They still haven't got back a couple of people.
That's
so
correct.
If that happens,
how about Vince Young? This guy did he? He's doing better than the Wonderlic said he would do.
Just a tad. It was really sad.
Whoever came up with the idea of measuring quarterbacks by the Wonderlic?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I'm watching obviously the championship game last year, Texas and USC, and being a Big 12 fan, if I am a fan, when I allow myself to be a fan, I should say, watching Vince Young throughout his college career, watching him progress, and thinking after seeing him in the Texas USC game, how much to me. I mean, he's a little bit different, obviously, in some of the way he approaches the game, but he reminded me quite a bit of Randall Cunningham in that game against USC. A little bit of differences here and there. You can pick it apart. But the bottom line was, then he comes into the pro season, and they're talking in preseason play about, let's just be honest. They said how dumb he was is what they were trying to tell us. And he starts off shaky, as most rookies do. And I was really bummed about it because I thought, man, I like this kid. He's a real hard player. He got Mac Brown to scrap his offense, his schemes, and what he's always done, and just let Vince go in there and get it done and improvise. and it got him a national championship. That's how good he was. And he's starting to finally find himself and get into his own. What scares me is what happened to Rando and a lot of great quarterbacks who could run the football. When comes that time does a coach say, you know what, you got to stay in the pocket more. You got to stay in the pocket and throw the ball more. And then all of a sudden his effectiveness really drops off.
You know what? I don't think he'll have to worry about that as long as Fisher and Chow are together in Tennessee. These guys are great coaches. And they're not going to mess up a winning recipe. I mean, they never told McNair, hey, you can't do this or do that. McNair happened to go out and get hurt a lot. And maybe Young, the same thing could happen to Young. But I don't think they're going to alter his style. He's very, very good at what he does. And, in fact, you know, all three rookie quarterbacks are doing a nice job. Leinart has been very effective lately for Arizona. And I thought, I know it was the second half and they were way behind last week, but I thought Cutler did a good job in the second half, and he's going to be very good for Denver. And meanwhile, Houston drafts Mario Williams, and these geniuses, you know who their quarterback's going to be next year? Jake Plummer.
Yeah, exactly.
Guaranteed
Plummer's
going to be the quarterback in Houston next year. Why didn't you draft? If you weren't going to draft Reggie Bush, how do you not draft Vince Young, the hometown guy? Or how do you not draft DeBrickashaw Ferguson, the left tackle, who's an outstanding player? Had a bad game last week, but he's an outstanding rookie. You can have all the salary cap restrictions and talk about parity you want. As long as you get organizations like Houston and Detroit and Oakland in this league, there's always going to be really bad squads, okay? How about this, by the way? Have you heard this? Sebastian Janikowski's a little bit dinged up for Oakland right now. He's missed 4 straight field goals over the last 2 weeks. They invited Vanderjagt into a kick, and he turned him down. Here's a guy without a job. Didn't want to go to Oakland. How bad is that?
You know, this is kind of off the subject, rather teams, and I'm talking about players in the context, but you were mentioning quarterbacks, and when do you decide suddenly when you're a star quarterback, I'm going to tell him to stop running so much because he can get hurt. Well, that's for quarterbacks, and I've just had a gripe that's been bothering me fierce for about a couple of years now, and it holds true with the colleges too, although we didn't have any college football action last week. Maybe I'm an old-timer, Jim Brown, Earl Campbell, Peyton. Yes, let's hold hands. In any case, I've been watching games this year, and it seems like even more than ever, I'm seeing ball carriers running out of bounds instead of picking up those last 2 or 3 yards, and it seems to have accelerated over the last couple of years. And I don't know if it's because of big money. Certainly with the pros, if you get hurt, you can't play, and it cuts your longevity. But I mean, it's just like play after play, they're throwing away 3, 4, 5 yards when they decide to go out of bounds rather than take a hit. And
thinking Walter Payton's sick from
boy,
above.
doesn't it?
Because there's a guy who always took that extra hit to get that extra yard or two and never missed a lot of time. T.O. did it the other night.
You saw that, yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Self-preservation is still the first thing.
Well, you know what? But it wasn't before. And I can understand, maybe not understand, but maybe the excuse for the pros is you're talking about big money. But that's not the case with the college kids, and you're seeing it in college games too.
Well, wait a minute. It is big money in the
colleges. Well, it is,
because if they're going to the next level,
that's true.
You know what? Look what happens to guys that get hurt late in their careers in college, and they don't get the next level.
And you know what? For Walter or any of them, Jim Brown, it wasn't just the extra 2 or 3 yards. Okay, it was just a fear factor too. People didn't want to tackle those guys because of that. And secondly, it isn't just the 3 or 4 yards you get. Sometimes they hit them and they went for even more yards.
You know, players are bigger, stronger, faster than they ever were. They're playing on, in some cases, hard turf. Yeah. The injuries are more devastating when they get hurt. Blown out knees, etc., shoulders. I don't blame them for self-preservation. I'd rather give up the 2 yards and get the next 100. Yeah. You know, I'm not saying you should be cowards out there because anybody who walks on the field is not a coward. That's a very tough game. And you know, I like the quote by Vince Lombardi: "Football is not a contact sport. Dancing's a contact sport. Football is a collision sport."
Yep.
And that is true. And it's worse now because these players run faster, they're stronger. Look at go back to the 50s, 60s, 70s. The linemen they were big, but they weren't like this.
What isn't the linemen that are scary? It's the linebackers, I think, of all players are the ones, because you're getting to the point now where these guys are all 230, 240, and they run so the collisions are so much greater
You know what,
than
though,
what Lombardi
the teams that are the best have guys that go after the extra yard. LT in San Diego. He's not going to duck and run out of bounds. And, you know, he's looking to get that extra yard or two. And the teams that are at the top of the league are the teams that have players that do that.
You can see that, and that's one of the things I like about Peterson. Who hurt himself getting extra yards. for Oklahoma. But this guy, he doesn't take it easy.
Sure.
He's never an easy guy to get down, and he's going to make a real good running back at the next level.
We should jump onto that for just a second, if you guys don't mind, since we're not constrained by.
We want to go back to the Big 12?
Time. Well, no, just about Adrian
So what's
Peterson
new?
I would never bring up the Big 12. Clint always does. He nudges me. But, when I look at, like, Peterson, I mean, I like the kid for one thing, but I'm wondering now, because did you see how well that team ran the ball the rest of the year with their other two running backs, including Alan Patrick? I mean, Alan Patrick looked like, Peterson all over again. He looked
So maybe
like
a little bit of
coming.
it's the system, maybe?
So I'm wondering a little bit if it's that offensive line and a good blocking system, incredible run blocking schemes run by the Oklahoma Sooners. I would think twice. I would really have to get this guy in camp and see what he can do without being behind that Oklahoma offensive line.
Well, the systems worked. I mean, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago with Denver. I mean, for years, no matter who they plugged in in the backfield, they always ran the ball very well. And now this year they're not, but it is the system a lot of times. I mean, if a good quarterback gets good numbers because their offensive line protects them.
Sure.
You take a. I mean,
Well, look at this.
guys
Look at this Cal team over the last 4 or 5, 6, 8, 9 years now. Super quarterbacks coming out of college, they go to the pros. There hasn't been a lot of success for any of these Cal quarterbacks.
That's true.
Maybe once again the system.
The system. Yeah. We've been trashing Rex Grossman a little bit the last couple of weeks, and I know you've been defending him. I got to give him credit where credit's due. He didn't play that badly.
No, good game, not great, but
not great. He threw some balls.
But see, that's all really Chicago wants from him, not to make mistakes.
Exactly. That's
all they want is manage the game. Just don't screw it up. He was okay. He was playing against a really bad defense. I mean, the Rams' defense absolutely stinks.
Yeah, well, they play this soft schedule. They're getting away with a lot.
Oh, they're going to be 14-2.
Yeah.
I can't see how they're going to lose one of these last 3 games. It'd be a shocker if they do.
You don't think Tampa Bay's going to beat them?
Not unless Chicago plays with 9 guys, and Hester isn't one of them.
I'm going to scratch my money line play.
They could have a bad game and lose, but are they a legitimate 14-2? If they
no, they're not.
Boy,
their defense is a legitimate 14-2.
The defense isn't as good as it's been. And I'll tell you, Tommy
the
Harris.
run defense is really
that's it.
Tommy
Harris is a
Tommy
big
Harris
injury.
is a big loss. Yeah.
The only one that's really obviously Urlacher's still a beast.
Oh,
he's just making incredible plays the other night against the Rams. I wanted to talk just quickly. You talked about Denver and Cutler a little bit. If you're a Denver season ticket holder, don't you want a refund when Shanahan comes on the air and says, we're not about making the playoffs, we're about winning the Super Bowl. You know what? You might not have been able to win the Super Bowl with Jake Plummer as your quarterback, but don't tell some guy who just spent $5,000 on a ticket to see his team get to the playoffs and at least have a chance once you get there that you would rather throw away the season.
I don't agree with that. I think he did the same thing that Dallas did.
Cutler's not going to get into the playoffs.
It just worked,
Plummer was.
It just worked better. Well, yeah, but Dallas may have been a playoff team with Bledsoe. They gambled.
They weren't a playoff team with Bledsoe. They were written out. They were done. Yeah.
The other thing is, though, when Dallas made the connection with Romo, it's after 4 years there.
Right. Okay. Oh, yeah, I understand
this
that.
kid is after 4 weeks. I mean, I like Cutler. Don't get me wrong. He's big, strong, great arm. I think he's going to be a superstar down the road. When that's going to click in, I don't know. It might happen this week. It might take another year.
Sure.
But at some point, he will be a better addition to this team than what Plummer was.
They're throwing away the season.
Unless they can pick up a victory this week, they are throwing away the season.
I don't think the reality is they may have made the playoffs if they keep Plummer in there. They may have lost these games anyway. You think Plummer's going to make a difference against San Diego last week? They were going to get killed in that football game.
I think Dave. First, going to last week, I would have sided with Scott. But more I think about it, the way Denver played, or more precisely, how poorly Plummer had just. Each game is getting better, worse and worse. I think you're right, Dave. I don't think it would have made a difference.
The game planning, not at San Diego. San Diego beats everybody.
Yeah.
When they were at home the week before, and the game planning, the play calling was horrible. 3rd down and 7 with 5 minutes to go in the game, and the game's on the line, and they're running the ball up the middle for a yard and punting. If you're going to do that, why is Cutler in the game? That's the bottom line.
That part
and I'm a Cutler
argument.
fan, but the play calling in Denver the week before was putrid. It was horrible in the final quarter of that game.
Against Seattle?
Yeah, they were
that
so
was a
protective
terrible
of
game.
Cutler. If you have to be that protective, then why is he in the football game?
Yeah.
Especially when you're at home and you got a chance to win and
That
you're in a
part I
fight
get
for the
no
playoffs.
argument.
I didn't like Seattle's play calling in that game either. I thought the game was poorly called on both sides.
Well, they didn't do much better last week, did they?
No, they didn't. Seattle's very,
By the way, is
very
Dennis-
overrated.
I don't think
team.
Hasselbeck's ready. I still don't think he's 100%, and they haven't said anything. But I just watched the last couple of games that they've played, and he hasn't thrown the ball as often on plays that I thought they would. I don't think he's 100%, to be quite honest. with you.
Probably isn't. You know, last week there were some teams that are supposed to be the higher echelon of the league that got absolutely trashed. I mean, look at Dallas got trashed at home. The Colts got trashed on the road. I mean,
New England
these are
losing
the
a
teams
shutout.
we're talking
The
about.
Lions
No,
got beat.
Yeah, there's a shocker, Dave.
that was a shocker.
You know, talking about Dallas real quickly, we had New Orleans on Sunday night, and plus 7.5. Thought the line was ridiculous. Obviously, it sounds great now talking about it when it was 6 days ago, 5 days ago, whatever. But
Well, actually,
look at
Dallas dominated the first 4 minutes. I mean, they were up 7-0, and it looked like, boy, that was the
That
wrong.
second handoff of the
Taking
game.
the points and the dog was the wrong way to go. I think at that point.
When I look at their schedule, and I looked at this 4-game run they've been on or whatever, that I believe started Thanksgiving when they played Tampa Bay, was playing their third game in 13 days. It was cream puff city for 4 weeks in a row. I thought, wow, nobody's paying attention. This team has played nobody, and they've gotten 4 wins against the dregs of the league. And now they've got to play against probably the most balanced offense they're going to see all season, with an incredible play caller, by the way, in Sean Payton, who knows everything Bill Parcells is going to try to do because Payton was calling the plays for him the year before. So I was just surprised, and I think Dallas has got some worries because
They've got
Romo
worries
has
at
come back to the
linebacker.
pack a little bit the last couple
Well,
of
not
games.
just Dallas. We talked last week about the AFC looking like they had the stronger teams. The NFC, and I mentioned I thought Seattle by the end of the year, if they got healthy, they'd still be a really quality ball club. But I'll tell you, after last week's results, does anything look good in the NFC right now?
I would have to go with Dallas, the Saints. I mean, they both look extremely good. I mean, Dallas stubs their toe in one game doesn't mean they're not good. But the NFC is very weak. There's no question about it. I want to go back to that Colt game and their rushing defense. This game, it goes back several weeks when the Colts played the Patriots. Patriots have a very good running game, and we consider Belichick to be one of the best coaches. Now, we do know that he might be going through some personal issues and maybe not as, who knows, maybe he's not as focused as he normally would be. Usually those kind of things bother most people. But they don't run the ball. They throw on every down, and they were dominating early running the ball, just like the Jags were against the Colts, and then they stopped.
That was the weirdest game plan I've seen this year.
Yeah.
I can't believe it was the
especially
Patriots.
out of a coach like him.
Strange.
I still go back to that and say, how did the Patriots not dominate that football game?
The funny thing is, though, I mean, and even though as usual they had trouble with Miami last week, which seems to always happen to them, but the AFC is just so much better than the NFC. I mean, we just talked about Dallas and New Orleans and Chicago. These teams barely make. They may not even make the playoffs. The AFC. You could be looking at, I think, at least the 4 best teams in football in the AFC, and maybe the 6 best. It's that deep. I mean, the disparity between the conferences is ridiculous.
It is. What's the line on the Super Bowl now? AFC?
4.5.
That's a bargain.
Yeah, last I saw was
Well, I
4.
think
That's
that is
that's a
true.
total bargain. I mean, who are you going to throw in there? Let's say you get a.
Well, what's
Let's
the
say
worst
it's the
team?
Let's say the Chargers go up against Dallas or the Saints. What would you make the
I
number?
would guess the number's got to be 6, 6.5 at least.
Right.
If not 7. Maybe not 7, but 6, 6.5.
Who would be your best 4 teams in football today?
I think San Diego, then maybe the Chargers, and then maybe those lightning bolt guys. Come on, no, I mean seriously.
They're all in the same stadium.
Yeah, I think
right?
they pretty. San Diego, maybe Baltimore. I'll tell you what.
Baltimore's good.
Baltimore's
After that
very
win,
good.
that road win last week was very impressive. And then maybe Cincinnati and his team. Cincinnati's coming on strong right now. Jacksonville is squad I really like, and if you had to pick
I'm
an
not gonna throw New England out of
NFC
that
team,
mix
maybe
yet.
maybe
Exactly.
Dallas.
I mean, they had a bad game last week, but I'm not throwing New England out of that mix. I don't think they're the best.
So
they're
many
not the
injuries,
best
though.
team,
They've just
but
got so many injuries.
I understand it.
You
I'll
notice
tell
one
but
thing.
more
Neither
so.
one of you mentioned the Colts.
Not right now.
Isn't that amazing? And we started off the year that this was the best team in football, and they've.
Well, I had Baltimore to win the Super Bowl this year, so I'm staying with that
You're
too.
alive. I mean, that defense is devastating. We also didn't mention Chicago.
No?
Isn't that amazing?
But I think Chicago's really vulnerable.
Yeah.
Well, because they can't stop the run anymore with the injury to Harris that you mentioned out. That makes them a whole different team.
And
Besides the fact that Grossman's struggling with his inexperience, and it's going to struggle. It's going to be probably fivefold at least to the playoffs, because when a young guy who's struggling because of a lack of experience goes in the playoffs, he usually doesn't all of a sudden grasp it and get it and have a great postseason.
By the way, at what point do you just say, you know what, let's just give him the ball at the 40-yard line, kick it out of bounds? This guy has to, holy cow.
You know,
wow.
I would say San Diego's the #1 team, but they've got the same problem that you mentioned with Tony Dungy might be falling into, and that Schottenheimer all of a sudden loses his mind when he gets into the playoffs. We'll have to see if that's going to happen
I think
again.
if he comes out and gets ultra-conservative in the playoffs this year, they'll hog-tie him
They should.
in the locker room, and they won't let him out.
You mean that he might
we've
just
seen it.
run Tomlinson
He's-
over and over
You know
again?
what? He's doing a different job coaching this team.
How about this?
Well, this is his
Super
best
Bowl,
team,
San
too.
Diego against New Orleans.
That'd be great.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Oh, man.
With a total of
What a-
75.
What a story that would be. That
I'll
would
tell
be a
you
heck of
what,
a story.
a lot of people have been talking about New Orleans reminding people, not the exact same game plan, obviously, on offense, but reminding people of the 99 Rams who went on, the greatest show on turf, who went on to win the Super Bowl over the Tennessee Titans. Disagree with that a little bit, and it's been talked about a little bit lately, because the Rams had a fantastic defense back then who was on the field a lot because of the high-flying St. Louis Rams offense. I think the Saints are going to have their problems in the playoffs because they're not a good run defense. They give
that
up
could
way
be-
too much on the
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah, you didn't realize the Rams were so good, but you have to think about how many minutes that defense had to play
And that's-
because of the short scoring rate. I tell you, though, Breeze is remarkable. What, he had 5 straight 300-yard passing
has to be,
games.
yeah.
Has an off, well, not an off game. He actually played pretty well 2 weeks ago. It's just that the run game was going so well. The Overland game, he didn't have to throw the ball much. He comes back with another 300-yard performance.
But that's the difference between the NFC teams and the AFC teams. I mean, there's no perfect teams out there. But the AFC teams, they don't have as pronounced weaknesses as each of the NFC top contenders do. Dallas has got problems at the linebacker spot. They're small at linebacker. And New Orleans really exposed them last week. And they're going to have issues in that area. And, Romo, we'll see. He played a bad game last week. It's his first one. But
Well, he had 2 interceptions the week before. Didn't play
yeah,
real
but he
well.
also he made some great passes in
He
that game
did.
too. I mean, the pass to set up the game-winning field goal. That's a fifth option.
that was
a
a-
fifth
that
option.
was-
and
that
he
was
hit
a
him.
great- that
Oh,
was
it
a great
great
play.
play.
That was a great play.
New Orleans, as you mentioned, very questionable run defense, and the Bears. I think the defense is still really good, even with maybe some issues against the run. But their offense, I still think, has some major problems. So to me, there's just no really solid teams coming out of that conference. And I agree that the 4.5, even if it doesn't come much more than that, depending on the matchup. If, for instance, Cincinnati or somebody came out of the AFC and ended up against Chicago, they're not going to be 4.5-point favorites over Chicago.
Going back
But
to
I still think
Cincinnati a
they're
little bit, they
good shape.
They have Cincinnati has come on, and their defense has really gotten good all of a sudden. They were pretty bad early, but they have started.
That's
to
because
play
all their
pretty well.
guys were handcuffed. Wait a minute, no, that,
I gave out a bailout
They
of the
are
week in
again.
pro football. I gave out a bailout of the week, and it was Cincinnati early in the season. And unfortunately,
Well,
a lot of the guys
couldn't
weren't bailed out
advertise
yet.
that so you'd know who you were on, wouldn't you? Yeah. It's like saying your dog of the year when the matchup between
we're-
Miami and Buffalo, right?
We're also in the basketball season. We got the NBA and we got college basketball. We're going to come back with a great game between Western Kentucky and Tennessee.
Coming up next, our panel breaks down the game between the Hilltoppers and the Volunteers in Saturday's basketball. But first, Glenn McGrew, who won his college shocker with Rutgers last Saturday, as well as his 25-star release on Purdue and his 25-star NBA selection on Phoenix, has 5 big games available.
Well, we got some college hoops, my favorite sport, coming up in a couple seconds here. Let me mention, though, last week I dropped a big call on San Diego State. Had a terrible first half against Arizona, just simply couldn't recover. Still, had a pretty good Saturday. Won my college shocker big play on Rutgers over Princeton, straight up winner, getting 5.5, 6 points, and a 25-star play on Purdue over Missouri, a game that I guess I wasn't that smart about. I believe Scott had a big play on him too. Great minds, that thing about thinking alike. And I capped off a nice weekend with another 25-star play on Sunday in the pros. Phoenix just destroyed Charlotte. This Suns team right now is darn right scary. This week, I've got a huge $20 college hoops offer for you. 5 sides, including Cincinnati at Ohio State. Everybody's going to get a chance to see that big center Odom here in this contest. And you're also going to get details on how you can get my NFC Game of the Year. That's really a total then of 6 winners, just $20. The number's 1-900-226-0410. 5 big college basketball plays plus details on my NFC Game of the Year. 1-900-226-0410. Now we got hoops here. Western Kentucky, pretty good team taking the road, right?
We got the Sun Belt against the SEC. We got 2 guard-oriented run and gun kind of clubs. We got the 9-2 Hilltoppers against the Volunteers of Tennessee. Tennessee's coming off that big victory over Memphis. The Hilltoppers are coming out of their tests again, and this
final exams. I never worried about those things.
No, but you never passed anything either.
Didn't matter when you're playing football. You get away with anything.
That's absolutely true. This should be a good basketball game.
I'd tell you what, you got 2 really good players in this game. Courtney Lee from Western Kentucky has already been Sun Belt Player of the Week twice. And
Lofton.
Chris Lofton is a really good player at Tennessee. He's had 5 SEC Player of the Week honors in his career now, and he's already had 2 this season. And he was spectacular against Memphis. I think he had 34 points or so in that game. So you get 2 bona fide stars on the court. I think this game plays right around the number. I'm having a tough time coming up with a selection on it, to tell you the truth, because I tell you, the other thing these 2 teams have is a ton of depth. They both go like 10 deep. And you're going to see players running in and out of the lineup. Some numbers that you can look at. 43% is all Tennessee shooting, 49% for Western Kentucky. That may be a key figure, because you're going to get a bunch of points here with Western Kentucky. And the fact that they are the better shooting team maybe keeps them close there. I know they'll treat this as a really big game because they're going into SEC territory. So that would be the indicators that I have on Western Kentucky. But to be honest with you, it won't be a play for me because it's going to fall right on my number, basically, and I'm not going to play that.
I think it would be a play for me, Dave. I mean, you have this Western Kentucky, the Sun Belt team is going to look for respect.
Oh, sure.
They don't get that much from everybody, and now they're going to SEC territory. And Tennessee's coming off the big victory over Memphis, which has got to be a kind of sort of a letdown spot. Any points in this game, I look for the Hilltoppers to win the game straight up on the floor. Don't need the points.
I think it's going to be a game that, for what I like, you better get fast, because I think it's going to change quite a bit. I like the over in this game. I think you're going to see both teams obviously doing what they do best, which is get the ball up and down the court. Bruce Pearl's done a great job coaching this team this year. Got the big win over Memphis last week, and you got to give them credit. They came out with a fantastic game plan and carried it out right from the get-go, built a big lead and never let up. The one thing Tennessee does, though, is they can let the other team, the opponent, control the tempo. And we saw them score, in the 80s usually, but we saw them being held to, 44 points, I believe it was, against Butler, a good Butler team. So if you're an opponent and you stay within your game and you've got good components out there, you can force Tennessee into your game plan. And I think that's what happens here. They're going to want to run. Western Kentucky is going to abide, and you're going to see a ton of points in this one. I think it goes well into the high 170s as far as a combined final score in this one. I do believe the total is going to skyrocket, though, once it comes out. Yep. You're going to see a lot of people playing the over.
So you maybe better get it as quick as possible.
One other thing is that helps the Western Kentucky side is that if Tennessee is ahead late, they're not a very good foul shooting team. They're only 64% of the year. That's the kind of a team that can allow the other team to backdoor them if they're ahead 8 or 9 points. And get knocked down to 4 or 5 in a hurry. So, again, it won't be a selection for me, but I would lean to Western Kentucky to get it, Jim.
I like taking the points, and I like the over. So I think both plays are possibilities here. As if both of them are willing to run. Tennessee's big fault, they just don't shoot the ball real well from the field or from the free throw line. It's a real adventure for this team too. They force 18 turnovers per game. Pardon me, they commit 18 turnovers per game. So the guard play at times will shed, but they force 22. Yeah. So they just love to run.
With the tempo of this game, there's going to be a lot of turnovers. This goes along with that kind of up tempo, kind of sort of careless kind of game plan. We've got another big game coming up, Gonzaga and Georgia. That's a biggie. We'll be right back.
In a moment, Gonzaga travels across the country to battle the Georgia Bulldogs. But first, we'll hear from Smokin' Dave Koken, who won his Ohio Valley Conference Game of the Year last week and nailed another Proline best bet to go 20-6 for the season and is ready to fire with another huge special.
Well, my run has been a long one with these games here on Proline. Go to the TV show, and now with the web show that we're doing, 20-6 on the best bets and the contest plays throughout the season with Wisconsin last week as my best bet here in the show. And the elderly gentleman over there also had Wisconsin, so we were both together on that one. And the free offer I had last week was terrific as well. We had 3 big games, including my first conference game of the year. That turned out to be an underdog that won the game outright. Murray State coming through very nicely. So, it's going really well in college basketball. And just trying to decide what should I come up with for an interesting promotion this week. Why change it? It's working. It's free. Everybody's going to love that. Here's the number, 1-800-547-4224. Going to give you 3 really strong college basketball games again. I can't give you a conference game of the year because there's only 3 conference games in the whole Saturday schedule, and none of them is going to be of that magnitude. But what I am going to give you is 3 outstanding plays that are going to make you a winner just like you were last week. So make sure and call the number, 1-800-547-4224. You're going to get 3 big winners at no cost. We get Rabio and the Zags heading east to face Georgia. This is a really good basketball game.
It is a really good basketball game, Dave. And I mean, Georgia has this issue coming off 11 days off, and that may not be quite sharp enough for Gonzaga. Gonzaga's a good team. They've beaten a couple teams in North Carolina, Texas. I mean, this is a good basketball team, well coached. They don't have Morrison anymore, but who needs them when you're 9-2 and you're playing like this? A good basketball team.
Well, you look at this Georgia team: Mercer, Stooks, Gaines. They've got 3 terrific guards, so I really like that. And then maybe most impressive, and it kind of gets overshadowed, is the fact they've got 5 men in that front line rotation. 5 guys 6'9" or bigger. I mean, it's just they can just keep throwing numbers at you. They were my choice as the most improved team in the SEC. I think they had a lot of close games they lost last year. A little more experience, had a lot of injuries in the front line. That's why they had to play these guys. So they had a lot of. I think the big problem for Gonzaga here in this spot, they just came off wins over Washington and Washington State. Not great basketball teams, but good schools. And of course, that's a couple rivalry games. You love Gonzaga. Gotta love to beat Washington and Washington State.
Well, they lost to Washington State.
They lost by 10 to Washington.
Oh, that's right. They did lose to Washington State, but still coming off those 2 games. You know what their next contest is? It's a game against Duke, and I don't know that you'd want to look past a talented team like Georgia, but I think it might happen here. I just think it's a good spot for the SEC team.
Their second leading scorer doesn't even start. The Brown kid, Zacchaeus Brown.
Yeah.
This kid's coming off the bench and he's scoring 16 points a game. Georgia's under the radar. You would think it'd be the other way around. The West Coast Conference team would be the under the radar team, and the SEC team would be the one that everybody knows about. But Gonzaga's made such a name for itself, as all you guys that are watching know, that they're the popular team here. And everybody knows what they do in these preseason games. You wonder if Gonzaga at some point could have won a national title if they could reverse their schedule somehow and play the tough games toward the end of the year to get tournament ready. Instead, they've got a couple more decent spots left, against named teams. Then they've got to play all West Coast Conference stuff the rest of the year, and I think that
conference
takes
is
away
down
from
a
their
little, isn't it,
sharpness.
too, this year?
It's not a good league this year. You're right, but I do think they're going to have a tough time here with this Georgia squad because Georgia's more the unknown factor. I think this is going to be a really close game. And Georgia plus the points looks like the right side to me.
The one thing that scares me about this game, I love what you guys are saying. Jim kind of hit on it at the first part of the segment of talking about this game, trying to speak here, about the 11-day layoff that the Georgia Bulldogs have. And they were playing at a high level, and all of a sudden you've got almost 2 full weeks to sit around and do nothing but practice. And the one example that I can use on how this could affect a team is Dana Altman and their slow start with the Creighton Blue Jays. Before they played Xavier last week, before they played Dayton and Xavier in about a 3 or 4 day period last week, lost to Dayton in the close game of 1 at home against Xavier. Before the Dayton game, he said, I really blew it. He goes, I'm taking the entire blame for my team's slow start because I really did a poor job in scheduling. We've got 7 days off, 8 days off in between each of our first 3 or 4 games, 10 days off here. And he goes, and it didn't give us a chance to really develop a chemistry and get solid on the court, and added in some new players who also didn't have time to develop a chemistry between each other. And I think you might see the same thing out of the Georgia Bulldogs. It's a lightning-quick team. They don't have a lot of veteran leadership, but they are good. They have a lot of guys back, but they're young. And it's going to be what I'm really looking forward to seeing here is Ravio going down there and playing probably the quickest set of guards he's faced so far this season. Now, we saw them go up against the athletic North Carolina Tar Heels. They did a good job. They got the win. Now they're going to see pure speed. And I'll tell you what, Ravio has surprised me on how good he has become as a college basketball player, being the on-court leader for this team. There are 4 guards they've had in the last 8 or 9 years at Gonzaga, leaders who have been outstanding, including like Blake Stepp, in fact, which everybody remembers. But Ravio is doing things on the court right now that have only been done by one of those 4 guards, and that was Dan Dickau. Yeah. I mean, he's really a notch higher than I thought he would be. I thought this guy would be a 13 to 14 point per game player tops, be an okay leader, get you 25 solid minutes. This guy's leading, 21, 22 points a game without a problem, and not turning the ball over.
You know, he looked 2 years ago, he looked really good. You could kind of see that he was going to become a pretty good. Last year, he had some injuries, and he really had an off season. I mean, he really played poorly most of the year last year.
Yeah. He's going to play well. I think the key guy for Gonzaga is Pargo in this game, because I think that's the guy George is going to try to attack. George is forcing 23 turnovers a game, which is remarkable. And they actually played a couple of good teams there. The one real good team they faced, though, one game they really had trouble, Western Kentucky. Gave them problems. And I think, Mark Few's probably going to take some of the game film from that game and try and use it here.
Yeah, but he's not much of a coach.
Yeah, right. Oh, man, it's a miracle what he's done up there. But I still think the scheduling, even if George is a little bit stale off the layoff, boy, that Gonzaga-Washington game was huge because that was the last game in the series. They're apparently not going to be playing each other anymore, and I guess that was Washington's decision from what I can gather. And then you got the Duke thing coming up, so I think that kind of balances it off. But I'm just going to let my numbers here say it's a 1-point game. To me, you got to take the points in that situation.
Anybody want to talk about some bowl games or a bowl game?
How about the one that's sold out right here in Las Vegas?
Okay, we'll talk about BYU and Oregon in a couple minutes.
Coming up next Thursday's Las Vegas Bowl between BYU and Oregon. But first, we'll hear from Scott Spreitzer, who won his AFC shocker with the Dolphins, his NFC Game of the Month with Arizona, and had a 20-star winner with the Saints over Dallas. And this weekend, he releases his Pro Game of the Year.
Welcome back, everybody. Talking college football bowl action in just a moment. I'm going to tell you how to get my college bowl season free also in a moment. First, a quick note. Let's go back to pro football for just a moment. Since the first weekend of November, we have been absolutely on fire in pro football. Last week, we topped off another winning weekend with our AFC Underdog Shocker of the Year as the Miami Dolphins whipped the New England Patriots 21-0. We had our NFC Game of the Month on the Arizona Cardinals, finished off Sunday with our Sunday night winner with the New Orleans Saints 42-17 over the Dallas Cowboys. And today it has finally arrived. It is my pro football Game of the Year. Absolutely love one of the games on today's card. It's available right now for $25 on my action report. The number to call, 1-900-868-3350. There's also a code on that report that will get you my non-conference Game of the Year in college basketball, non-conference Hammer of the Year. My December Saturday college basketball slate so far, 9-3, 75% against the spread. We cashed our beatdown Game of the Month last week with Purdue over Mizzou. You won't want to miss out. You're also going to find out on that same report a code that gets my college football bowls for the entire run free of charge. It's all available right now, $25. Led by that Pro Football Game of the Year, 1-900-868-3350. We're going to talk about a game that has been sold out forever here in Las Vegas. BYU taking on Oregon. I think there's 35,000 BYU fans. There's 1 or 2 Oregon fans. Should be a home game, basically, for the Cougars, guys.
It is. Rocky Long from Mexico says BYU is as good as any team in the top 10 in football. I guess we're going to find that out. One thing, you get a mix of 2 conferences here. One is Pac-10 and then the Mountain West. We all know that the Pac-10 is a strong conference. BYU hasn't done all that well in bowl games lately. And will Bronco Mendenhall be able to get this team up? Both teams wanted to get into a BCS game. They didn't do it. Now they're stuck here this week. It's good for the BYU fans because they get to travel a little bit, come down to Vegas, have fun, and party at the game. What do you think?
Lots of points, guys?
Yeah.
Look, there's one caveat on this. Check the weather on the day of the game. I think it's a high-scoring game. But we do get some wind. Those of you who live in Las Vegas and are watching right now know what I'm talking about. When it gets windy out here, it really gets windy at Sam Boyd Stadium. There's nothing out there. And forget about points if it's windy. So be sure and check that because It's December, and we do get some peculiar weather out here at times. But if the conditions are good, how are there not going to be a bunch of points scored in this game? Beck is a great quarterback. This guy will be one of the, I would say, top 3 QBs taken in this year's draft. He'll be a first-round draft choice, and he's going to be a good pro. Oregon, neither of their quarterbacks is going anywhere, but they run that system pretty well. They're a good offensive football team, and they kind of got things back together again, really fought hard in that Civil War game against Oregon State. I think the intangibles here do favor BYU. But I got to tell you, I'm not so sure they're the more talented team. This Pac-10 is very underrated, in my opinion, this year. It's a very strong conference. And Oregon might be the more talented squad here, but they may not have quite the incentive level that BYU does, being in a virtual home game for them. And the fact that they lost this bowl game last year would really like to make amends for that. So I think those things favor BYU. But the play for me, assuming good weather in this game, it's got to be the over. I got to think this game's going to produce 70 points minimum.
I agree with you with the weather issue. I remember we played golf one day.
Oh, man.
40-mile-an-hour wind. Remember that? What happened that day?
The ball's landing behind us.
You hit the ball, and it just goes back over your head.
Happens to me even when the weather's nice.
Yeah, I know how your game is. I remember that.
Jim does.
That. I like the over in this game as well. There's only one way to look at the game. The question really is, as far as who's going to win the game, is will that Pac-10 talent come up and stop this Mountain West team? Because that's what usually happens, and the Mountain West hasn't done all that well against the Pac-10. So
I agree. We will make the end-ups. I think this is a good play on the over, assuming there's no problem with the weather. A lot of people are curious why this isn't a little bit higher line, and I'll tell you why. Because you look at Oregon, they did almost come back, but the bottom line is they lost 3 consecutive games to close out the year. One of the things I look for in bowl games is momentum. Another one is incentive. And, of course, momentum-wise, it's a no-brainer here. BYU's won 8 or 9 in a row. This Oregon team loses 3 straight games. And as far as incentive, I know they both were hoping for a BCS bid, but Oregon started out 4-0. They were highly ranked to start the season. They really, and then, of course, the Cal game, and it was all over after that. They expected to be in a BCS. I don't know if BYU did. They hoped to be. So I don't think that there's quite the letdown in this game for them that there is for Oregon. But, again, one of the reasons that Oregon is less of a dog than some people might think, if you look at their schedule, most people agree it was a top 10 schedule, one of the 10 most difficult schedules in the entire country. And, of course, that makes a big difference when you realize that BYU, I remember last week you guys kind of jumped on me a little bit about the fact that BYU, a team that could win a game against just about anybody, but if you played for a whole season in a tougher conference, they might not be that strong. And you're probably right about that. It would have been a lot more difficult, but they wouldn't probably come close to having the record they did had they played in the Pac-10 week after week and game after game here. But I think this is a good spot for BYU and the over. I like it 2 different ways in this game.
You don't base a bowl game on this or a bowl play on this, but one of the things I like to look at is see which team has their fans gobbling up tickets, because it gives you an indication on which team is excited to be in that bowl game. Oregon doesn't care about this game. That doesn't mean they're not going to cover the spread. I mean, my play is the over in the contest. But BYU is excited to be here. They want to come down here. They want to atone for their past bowl performance. And there's no doubt in our mind that BYU wants to be in this game. The one thing that I'm waiting to find out, though, before I make a play on the side is which replay group is coming. Because, boy, if we can get that group that was at that Oregon-Oklahoma game, you don't want to be on BYU, baby.
Well, we're going to come back and talk about a pro game in a couple minutes, so stay tuned.
In a moment, the Dolphins face the Bills this Sunday, but first, world champion handicapper Jim Feist, who went 5-1 in the pros with his personal service selections this Sunday and is now on a 2-week run of 75% winners, has a free weekend available to all callers.
We'll be talking about an NFL game in a couple minutes. I had another huge Sunday last week. 5-1, 83% in pro football. That's 75% over the past 2 weeks. I'm up over 150 units in college basketball alone. And this week, I want you to take advantage of 3 big plays absolutely free. My college platinum winner, that's a $500 value on Saturday, and my Sunday inner circle game, and a pro football game of the year as well. 3 big plays. If they don't all win, you get the rest of December's executive service absolutely free. The number to call is 1-877-JIM-FEIST. That's 1-877-546-3347. 3 big games, 75% winners in the NFL alone the last 2 weeks, up over 150 units in college basketball for the season. I'm going to give you 3 big winners this weekend, guaranteed, or the rest of December's executive service is free. 1-877-546-3347. Now on to the NFL. We got Miami going up to the Buffalo Bills. Gets a little cold up there. There's a hot weather team traveling north. Not usually a good situation for a hot weather team, but they are hot. They are a hot club, but so is Buffalo. They've covered, I think, 5 or 6 straight games.
Dick Duran's a good football coach. I knew he'd do well with this team. He's just a solid guy, and coaches good fundamental football. And the Bills are playing smart. This could be another weather game, so take a look at it. The weather's been weird. I mean, it's been nice in New York most of this week, so go figure. It's December, and it must be that global warming thing. I don't know. Whatever it is, check the weather. But regardless, I do think I'm actually hoping the weather's good here, because then the number won't come down, and I can play the under more comfortably. This looks to me like a low-scoring game. Harrington's doing a nice job for Miami. He's not making a lot of mistakes. They're keeping things relatively simple, not taking a lot of chances. Lossman threw the ball 15 times last week is all, and since they've reeled him in, he's playing a lot more intelligent football. He's actually playing very well for the Bills. I think both defenses are very capable. The Bills' defense, you think they're going to be confident after they just completely wiped out Tom Brady last week? Jason Taylor's an animal out there right now, and a fast one, too. He's going to be the defensive MVP this year, I believe, in the AFC. And I think both teams are going to have a tough time scoring in this football game. The odds maker did a good job, put a low total on this game, but not low enough. I can actually see this game being a 14-10 type of game that's actually an easy under.
I don't know about you guys, but I didn't think this late in the season that we would be able to use the words Joey Harrington in the same sentence with nice or good. But I tell you what, he's really done a great job, hasn't he? Of course, I think anyone that escaped that Detroit organization has to feel they had a new lease on life. This Miami team, I was shocked. 2 weeks ago, they had a 3 or 4 game winning streak. They were talking about maybe we run the table here, maybe we could make the playoffs, and then came in Jacksonville, a really good football team, and they beat them. At that point, it looked like Miami could forget it, and yet they came back. I was really impressed how well the defense played after pretty much dropping out for all intents and purposes the playoff possibilities to come back and play so well. I mean, their last 6 games now, they're giving up 13 points per game, and that includes the 24 that Jacksonville scored on them. I think 8 times this year they've held opponents to under 300 yards. In the NFL, that's terrific defense. I think the running game, whether it be Brown, there's a chance, I guess, he could be back this week, or Sammy Morris, is that his name? Yeah. I think it doesn't make any difference. I think either one of those guys can run on this Buffalo team. They give up a lot of yards in the ground. I think the clock rolls, and as Dave said, that's the best thing. Everybody thinks, ooh, I want to play the under. Let's have some bad weather. But then you'll see an adjustment. It'd be better off if it wasn't bad and it stayed, like you said, David, where it's at right now. I like the under.
I agree with the under. It's hard to pick a side in a game like this because they're both playing well, and they're kind of you just don't know what they're going to do week to week. But when you got Buffalo covering 6 straight weeks and Miami covering 5 out of 6 weeks, you got momentum on both sides. Neither one are going anywhere. The rush defense for Buffalo is a weak link, so Miami might be able to take advantage of that. But I would pass on the game and just play the under as well.
Here's I'm going to, I guess, be the contrarian today. And I might be putting my foot in my mouth here by doing this, but and you do have to check the weather when it comes to
I'll lay you 10 to
overs.
1. You can't put your foot in your mouth.
You win. Won't even try. It's a lock. But I'll tell you what. When I look at this game, usually when you play low totals under, you're doing all right. When you play those extreme high totals over, you're doing all right too. But I think this is a low total that's going to go over. I first of all think there's going to be a little bit of a letdown by the Miami Dolphins this week. 2 weeks ago, they looked pretty bad in that loss that they suffered, and then they came out, and how can you not get up for the New England Patriots coming to town, especially because Miami has always played them and game planned so well for the New England Patriots since Brady's been at the helm. I think as Dave mentioned or Glenn said earlier, Brady's only 7-5 straight up against the Dolphins. Plus, it's come out that possibly had some audio tape on the signals that Brady actually uses when he's on the football field. And And when you looked at the game itself, it looked like they knew something because they were always where New England wanted to go with the football. So I think a little bit of a letdown for the Miami Dolphins this week defensively. What scares me about taking Buffalo under the total in any game, they scored 44 last week combined with the Jets, is the fact that their defense is so bad at times. I mean, especially against the run. I know when you run the football, the clock runs, you think it's going to go under because the clock moves. But I wrote down these notes. Look what Buffalo's given up on the ground lately in the last several games. 147, 148, 188, 207, 197, 134. When you give up rushing yards like that, teams are all of a sudden able to find open passing lanes. And when that happens, I think Harrington is going to be able to get the ball to the receivers he needs to. At the same time, Losman not throwing the ball a lot, doesn't need to. McGahee's running for, 25 yards per carry. A little bit of an exaggeration, but he's getting the job done, picking him up and putting him down. And that opens things up for Losman, who's been getting the ball to Lee Evans, his top receiver, also spreading the ball around quite a bit. So I think the game's going to go over the total. I look for a final score to end up in the low 40s. Puts us about a touchdown or so over the posted total right now.
Interesting. You made a great case. When you're making that case, I'm thinking to myself, he's making a great case for Miami. Because when you can run the ball like that, you do control the game. It's easier. I mean, Losman did hit some long shots last week against the Jets, and that's not going to always be open, especially against a defense like Miami. We're going to come back, and we're going to have our best bets, and you know those best bets have been red hot, so make sure you stay tuned.
Coming up next, our Proline Best Bets, the biggest selection from today's show.
For my best bet, we're going to go with the points in Western Kentucky, a game we talked about right here on the show. I tell you what, it's been a great season for primetime clients, especially in the college ranks. I had a huge college football season, over 250 units of profit. So far in college hoops, it's been a marvelous run of late, 151 units up since November 26th. We're going to capitalize on that. I've got 5 big college basketball sides for you on Saturday. $20 on my power play line right now. And the best thing about it, you're also going to get details on how to get my NFC Game of the Year absolutely free on that call. So basically 6 huge winners, $20, the number 1-900-226-0410, or right here on the web. That's 1-900-226-0410.
Best bets have been a revelation on Proline in the regular season on USA Network and now right here on the website. 20-6 for the year on the best bets. Go to 21-6 with a play on Georgia to knock off Gonzaga. Last week's free offer was absolutely terrific. Had a conference game of the year, outright underdog winner. Terrific day for those of you who took advantage. If you didn't last week, make sure and do it this week. Or if you did last week, make sure and do it again. 3 outstanding college basketball plays, no cost. They're free at 1-800-547-4224. It's as easy as that. Make one phone call, 1-800-547-4224, and go 3-0 on the house.
Well, my best bet on this week's show is the over between Western Kentucky and Tennessee. And, folks, last week we warmed up with our underdog shocker of the year winner, Miami over New England. We warmed up for the big one. It's here. It's my pro football game of the year for 2006. It's available on Saturday. The game goes on Sunday, but you can get it early for $25, 1-900-868-3350, or get it right here on the website. You'll also get a code that gets my non-conference hammer of the year in college basketball and my college football bowl slate free of charge. All available on the website or on my action report on Saturday, 1-900-868-3350, just $25.
Before I get into my best bet and my offer, I want to remind you that next week we're going to cover quite a few of the bowl games, so we're going to really feature that on here on the show. We're going to have a lot of in-depth analysis and conversation about the bowl, so you don't want to miss that show at all. As far as this week is concerned, I'm going to agree with the other guys. I like this Western Kentucky Hilltopper team. I think it's a perfect spot for them, so that's my best bet for the show. And I want to remind you that I've been 75% in pro football the last 2 weeks, 5-1 last week. That's 83%. And I got a big offer this week. 3 big games, guaranteed to win, or the rest of December's executive service is free. And that includes my college basketball play, which is a $500 value, and I'm up over 150 units in college basketball, and I'm going to throw in an NFL game that's a game of the year as well. 1-877-Jim Feist, or 1-877-546-3347. We've had fun here today, guys. I'm glad you guys tuned in. Make sure you come back next week. We'll have a great show for you.
Thanks for watching us this week, and be sure to catch Proline on the web next weekend, available Friday nights for more great insight.